What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor Podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. You're watching the Athletor Podcast, and this week's guest is the incomparable Chael P. Sonnen. The guy is an absolute gem of a human being and one of the most knowledgeable people in this sport. He goes through some of the things that he had to deal with in dropping programs in college. And he also talks about Russia not being in the Olympics this year and how that may or may not taint some of the medals that we bring home as Americans. And you're never going to believe who is on his Mount Rushmore of wrestling. It's all coming up next, Athletor Podcast. We have got wrestling royalty on. Get out of here. Don't you hand fight that away, sir. Wrestling royalty, give it more is what we're saying to you. Chael Sonnen in the house. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on and taking some time with us.
I can only imagine the excitement. First off, I love the podcast. Thank you for having me on. But I know you must really be happy to finally have an equal intellectual of the wrestling mind. And maybe I'm not as good, by the way, but I can come up there and I follow this stuff. And a lot of people don't. And as you're coming upon the Olympics, there's a lot of people, you're going to throw names out and they don't have any idea what you're saying. I do. I have followed this. I saw the seeds. I'm ready for you.
I am so excited that you not only are in the world from so many different angles, but I'm also excited that you are as excited as everyone else. Like, look, here's the thing, man. Our sport is in desperate need of energy, of life. And one of the things that I think that you've always brought to the table is an exuberance for the sport of wrestling. Where does that even come from for you?
I don't know. I've never been asked that till right now. Where did that come from for me? So let's see. My father was a wrestler. My uncles were wrestlers. And this was very small stuff. There were clubs that didn't even exist back then, or they're like dreamed to go to college, didn't exist, but they did it. They did it in their local high schools. And my uncle went on to coach wrestling. And the relevance to my uncle is all my cousins. Those were the guys I looked up to. They were older than me. They were all really good. They were champion wrestlers here in Oregon, and some of them became All-Americans and had my cousin Corey. Kerry Colott lost 4 times in all of college. My cousin Corey was one of those losses. So,
really?
Yeah, I had really good people in the family to look up to. And so that just became my sport. I'd never seen a football game to this day. I've never seen a basketball game. To this day, my uncle won the Olympics in basketball and 2 NBA championships. Drives him crazy. But I've never seen it. I've tried. I bought season tickets before. I've even gone to the arena. I never made it. And then wrestling was just, I love it. I love it. I got into coaching it. I can't figure out how more people don't love it. I will talk to former teammates, college teammates that are supposed to be going, no, they will go back and they will watch and buy and donate to the football team. They will go and tailgate and talk about the football team. They never went back and watched a wrestling match. They didn't even know the wrestling schedule. As a matter of fact, our wrestling program got cut and they still watch football. I would never do anything for the University of Oregon. Nothing. Never. They call me. They ask me to do things for them. Tell you what I'll do for you, you pricks. I'll bury you the first opportunity I get, like you did our program.
I love that. Okay. I'm glad you brought it up, because it's important to me that Chael Sonnen has always had a very great scope, that the 30,000 foot view, okay, of this sport. And I've always respected that about you. And here's what it is to me. Is there any positive that we can take from University of Oregon dropping a program, BYU dropping a program? These are just places you've been at, bud. Okay. Like, and then all these programs, Boise State, all these programs that have dropped. Is there any silver lining? Is there any chance that this is a addition by subtraction type of a deal? Is wrestling in a better state now than it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, when they were dropping a ton of programs? And if that's the case, is it because we dropped some of those programs that were able to learn and add teams like Little Rock, add teams like the one that's coming up in Texas and stuff like that?
Well, there is definitely some truth. The strong did survive, or what they did at Little Rock. What a great example. But those guys, they knew what to do. They had great resources. I mean, there's a little bit more to that Little Rock program, and I mean that completely as a compliment. But no, there was nothing good about. I see people do this sometimes where they get a loss. That's the best thing that ever happened to me. Say, what a loser mindset and a liar. What a liar you would have to be. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me because it made me know. No, it didn't. It's like buying a business book, Mike. Every business book you've ever read was written by a liar. It was written by a guy that found a situation. There was a lot of luck involved, and they'll deny luck and they'll replace that with hard work. And he will always write in that book, I just knew. People told me I couldn't do it, but I knew what a liar. Why would you not just say I created an environment, I worked pretty hard, and the people ended up liking it? Why would you have to lie about it? And I'm just sharing with you, no, there's nothing good from these programs being cut. Wrestlers are the toughest people I know. And I could go one by one. These guys that became head coaches, if you understood the competitiveness and the ruthlessness that went into getting that position, but once they get there, now they just want to get along. Now they just want to please the AD. They want to stay in everybody's way. They don't want to ruffle feathers. They understand by other programs being cut that they're not going to spare the lash on them. And then they don't speak up and they don't fight and they don't come out. And we had such great people at the University of Oregon, but that concept was not understood, that we need to fill this building. It's like, hey, Chael, you keep saying that, but the AD has never told us that. The president of the school has never told us once.
They're never going to.
People in. It was one of those things that was like, well, let's just look at how we're going to do that. Let's start by getting the media. We had one local paper, but it came to all of them. Let's start by giving them interviews that are interesting enough that they come back and ask for another one next week. Now, took that away from them. The best way to do it, and by the way, I'm not picking on these guys. These guys were great. It's the mentality of coaches anywhere that you go, which is we are not going to rock the boat. And then you got the other side of it, by the way. Like, Chael Sonnen is the one guy that doesn't have to listen to me and do anything. He doesn't have to agree with anything that I say because he's doing the opposite and it's completely working. So that becomes the other side of the problem.
But that's the exception.
What's Chael talking about?
But that's the exception and not the norm. Because here's the thing, though, that people don't remember is that when he first got the job at Iowa State, he was banging down doors to give interviews, which is completely against his nature and would be shocking to people that hear about that now. But he was trying to get every media out. Yeah, dude. When he was about to sign David Taylor at Iowa State, he had the phone on speed dial to flow, to track, to this, to that. And he wanted everyone to cover that because he was trying to make his way into the sport. Now, guess what? 2011 happened.
Hey, I love that, but I didn't know that about him, but I love that story. Please continue.
Well, in 2011, they climbed to the top of that mountain, and now all of a sudden they can shut their doors and go, we're just a self-contained entity. We put butts in the seats, okay? We get the best recruits, and we develop them, and we win national titles. No, we don't need your publicity. The light shines on us anyway. Now, here's the problem with that, is that David Taylor now is at Oklahoma State, and he has already shut the doors to media outlets completely. Like you will notice that there is not one wrestling move being shown on their social media outlets. And that is by intent, 100% by intent. Now, David and I haven't spoken about this, but he's taking the page from Chael's book without having the success yet. Now, that scares me a little bit, no?
Oh, yeah. No, that's fascinating. I did not realize that. Now that you say it, yes, there was an absolute whirlwind, and that has gone quiet. And David is making some moves out there, by the way. Like, you got to find out about it second and third hand. I did not realize this until you said it. You've got my mind turned on. And yeah, I know that David looks up to Chael. That's not a secret. And yes, he's going to copy him. But it might be out of place. If he was to do it now without the success, it might be a little out of place. That's very interesting. Chael is so smart, by the way. Chael would be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company if he wasn't in wrestling. And that's the one thing people do not know about him. 100%. He keeps everything so quiet that people don't know that computer up there is running and it's playing a different game. He's 2 and 3 steps ahead. Yes.
Now he's and you know, one of the benchmarks for brilliance for me is a great sense of humor. And he's one of the funniest dudes that you'll find. Like, he is a sarcastic son of a gun. Like, I'm telling you right now, the dude's funny. And so, and these are aspects of the sport, and sarcasm to a fault at times, but these are aspects of the sport that I don't think a lot of people get to see. And one of the things that I wanted to speak to you about today, we got to shift gears a little bit because I don't want to run out of time. What do you think about Russia not being in the Olympics this year? Are these gold medals that the US is going to win, are they a little bit tainted? Is there a small asterisk upon them?
Well, I mean, if you meet a small asterisk like the great big glaring spotlight shining on it that will ruin these guys' lives and lead some of them to alcohol and drug abuse down the line. That's what happened on the 80 team. That's what happened on the 84 team. There was nothing lighthearted about what I just said. This is a devastating blow. And it is beyond unfair, by the way. And that's a completely separate question. It is disgusting that we look at it that way. I will tell you, I just had this conversation. A guy named Chuck Kearney, one of the greatest minds in wrestling, just truly brilliant mind.
Yep.
And I asked him that about Randy Lewis. I said, Coach, I'm watching Randy Lewis tapes, and this guy might be the best that we've ever had. He might be. He beat John Smith. He beat Leroy Smith. He won the Olympic championship. He changed weight classes after retiring, went to 49 and a half, and he won another U.S. Open championships. Why don't people talk about him? And Chuck told me for the same reason that Mark Schultz is not as revered as Dave, which is it was a tainted metal. And I was so bothered by that word tainted metal. And Coach Kearney explained to me, hey, these aren't my words. This is the way it was looked at then. And I was just a little boy. I didn't know what was happening.
I didn't know. Yeah.
I didn't come around until my father woke me up and took me into his bedroom to watch a little black and white TV in 1988 with a young man from Delray, Oklahoma named John Smith. I did not see wrestling in the Olympics till then. So I was 4 years late. And when I went to BYU, I was coached by Mark Schultz. I have a relationship still to this day, and people do not understand how great he was. Chael Sonnen will tell you. Les Gutchis will tell you. Kevin Jackson will tell you. Our greats will tell you he was, but they don't talk about him that way. And Coach told me because it was a tainted metal. So yes, when they look at this, what they're already getting ready to do to Kyle Dake and his achievement, everything that Kyle Dake went through to even show up to those trials after getting his ass kicked by Jordan Burroughs right here domestically over and over, and Kyle found a way. He doesn't get credit for any of that. And we still got a deal. The Belarusian is now back in the tournament. That's who he lost to in the last Olympics. And I'm just telling the fans that Belarusian's there. We're going to finally get that rematch, which isn't going to be close, by the way. Kyle Dake had messed up ribs. He's never told anybody. He's never complained about a thing. That was not the Kyle Dake. The Kyle Dake is in Paris right now. You're going to see him next week.
Here's the tricky part to me, though. Okay. And this is why and it's more of a hope than it is a feeling. Okay. It's a hope that there is less of an asterisk on these gold medals because, listen, in 84, when they boycotted, it was just Russia, and that was it, okay? It was just the USSR, and they boycotted, and there was no other options. Well, guess what? That Belarusian that you're talking about, he's Russian, okay? And Zamalov, who's a bad mofo, okay? He's wrestling for Uzbekistan. He beat Sidakov, by the way. Okay, so don't kid yourself in saying that there's no Russians in this bracket. I hope that this is looked at by the general wrestling public as just as, if not slightly less, of a bracket than it would be if Russia was there. Am I crazy for saying that?
Oh, Maul, I have that same hope. I'm just openly telling you, sadly, that's not going to be the case. And I mean, look what they're getting ready to do to Kyle Snyder. This already started as soon as there wasn't a Sadulayev. Excuse me. Sadulayev is not the undefeated monster you all say he is. He got his ass kicked last year by the Bahrainian who's in the tournament. And he got his ass. He quit the match. Then he was down 9-2. Yes, he found her. Oh, by the way, the guy I'm talking about, the Bahrainian, is the reigning world champion. It's not as though we don't have the right guys. It's not as though Russia had the right guy in every single weight class, but yes, it's still going to be looked at that way. That's just the reality. And you're never going to get this explanation like the one that I just gave you of, well, the Russian wasn't actually the top guy and the top guy was there. It doesn't work that way. You want to hear a story? This story is hard for me to tell. It makes me emotional for some reason, and I don't know why. I never met Dave Schultz, but this story that I'm about to tell you is it's hard for me to tell. Here's what happened. Dave Schultz wrestled in the Olympic Games and he won them. 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks. It was right after. He's in the Henry Deglon Challenge in France. And in the finals, Dave met the Soviet. I love that you said USSR. I know what that is. I know what Soviet Union is, but some people, they won't know it. And he runs into the Soviet, and Dave slaps his hand in the finals, and he says to him as he shakes hands, "This is for the gold." And he lost the match. And he lost the match 6-5. I don't know why. I've never met him. I don't know why this story's hard for me. he never called himself Olympic champion again. He died. He wasn't the Olympic champion. It's one of the reasons he was trying to come back in 96. He hadn't finished his goals because he hadn't won the Olympics.
It's important to our sport that these heroes are put on the pedestal in which they are. And that's why it's hard for you to tell it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, some of it's disgusting. I caught an interview by Mike Zadek. I was disgusted by it. Mike Zadek got second in the world. But before he got second in the world, he had achieved so much. Then just that was awesome. He was our Olympian. And you can't talk wrestling with him. He got introduced one time as world silver medalist, and don't ever call me that again. He does, and I just couldn't understand it. I remember being in college and watching Sammy Hinson crying on the medal stand when we were all so proud of him. You go out there, you do the best you can, you try to win the gold, but if you don't, you shake hands, you walk away, and you celebrate. You're in the Olympic finals. And I couldn't relate. Stephen Abbas isn't far off of this. These guys are disappointed. There's a fine line of genius and insanity. And I understand they've had a level of success that most of us have to just watch. But to not be proud of yourself, Mike Zadek doesn't want introduced as a world silver medalist. That's really hard for me to hear.
Mike Zadek won't come out of a tree stand. Let's be completely honest, man. The dude won't come out of a tree stand anymore. He had the job in college wrestling and walked away. I mean, look, there are certain jobs, to me, head assistant at Iowa, head assistant at Iowa State, head assistant at Oklahoma State. Those are the cushiest jobs in the world. You just got to deal with like 3 or 4 athletes, really. Let's call it what it is, right? I mean, and you got to, I mean, look, there's none of the blame put on you if you lose, and there's all the praise put on you if you win. And he walked away to go do tours in Montana.
Yep.
What does that tell? So that begs the bigger question. What are we doing in our processes in this sport that creates that type of insanity? What are we doing?
Well, see, that's the mistake. Like as a coach, at some point, there's secrets. There's secrets that must be revealed at all points in life. When we are born, the first person to lie to us is our parents, and that gets backed up by our aunts and our uncles and our grandparents, and that's just the lie of the spirit of the holidays. And we have very good reason. And once we find out we were lied, we then take that and we lie to our generation. Now, I'm only sharing that happens to you the day that you're born, but it never stops. And wrestling is a lot the same way. We will tell people it is all sacrifice, it is all dedication, it is all or none. There is no number 2, as a way of encouraging them, as a way of getting them to be number 1. But we forget to tell them the truth. We think they're going to figure it out on their own, which is when it's done. The medals were nice, but I got you in that for focus. I got you in that to burn up your energy to come home tired. I got you in that because you treat your teachers better, and you treat adults better, and you treat people better. I did this to build character. It wasn't actually all or none about that gold medal. And sometimes we forget to tell the guy. I've watched wrestlers go brain dead. The hardest working, most dedicated. My life is so easy, Maul. I will tell you, one of the truest statements that Dan Gable ever made is that if you wrestle, everything in life is easy. It is so easy. I have people tell me what a hard worker I am, and they compliment me. I don't work hard at all. I don't do it. I'm not working now. If you're not sweaty and working and your body's in danger, you're not working. From our standpoint as wrestlers, but they forget this. They get out of wrestling. And a lot of them, they really do go brain dead. They don't apply that same hard work, and they don't have goals anymore. They don't reset these things. Like there's some things that you just have to know. As a coach, we will tell athletes. I'll set a bunch of athletes down, and I'll tell them, you got to work hard, you got to sacrifice, you got to be responsible, you got to want it more, you got to get better sleep. I'll go through an entire checklist if you want to be a champion. The truth is, if you want to be a champion, if you want to win the Olympics this week, have more points than the other guy when time runs out. That's it. It doesn't matter how you got it. You didn't have to outwork him. Your mother didn't have to love you more, and you didn't have to sacrifice. You didn't have to miss the prom. You didn't have to do extra workouts. You didn't have to get up early in the morning. If you have more points than him when time runs out, and I'm sharing that to you as a way of building levity, but sometimes we forget to tell these guys this. I've watched coaches talk their own teams out of championships. I've watched coaches go all year and tell them, you must sacrifice, you must dedicate, and you can never go to the bar and put a girlfriend on hold I've watched them do these things, but then right before the tournament, the coach forgets to tell them, hey, by the way, if you didn't do any of those things, you actually did enough. Have more points than that guy, and they're going to raise your hand. And they don't do that. So you get a room full of guys that are listening to the coach and going, well, coach said to be successful, you got to sacrifice, and I didn't. Coach said to be successful, you can't have a girlfriend, and I have one. Let me tell you a story. You want to know where this is coming from? This happened to Matt Lindland. Matt Lindland sat down before the season, his senior year, with Coach Tim Newman. He wrote 2 goals down. I want to be undefeated. I want to win nationals. Tim Newman looked at that and said, well, Matt, you're not going to be undefeated. Hey, you're going to have losses. Now, what coach was trying to do is to let him know when this happens, don't be derailed. You can still win the nationals. That's what he was trying to do, but it's not what he did. He said, Matt, you're not going to be undefeated. So every single time, Matt Lindland, who trusted his coach, he was undefeated. 36-0, Big 8 champion, number 1 seed at the NCAA tournament. Every time Matt stepped on the mat, he thought, is this the one? I know I'm going to lose because coach told me I'm going to lose. And I trust my coach. But is this the one he was talking about? Every single time he stepped out there, he had to think like that. So I'm just sharing with you. We got to be careful what we tell these guys. I know old man Zadek, by the way. Bob Zadek is very respected. Bob Zadek got thrown out of the first time I met Bob Zadek. And when the Zadek boys see this, I hope they know I'm celebrating their father here. But the reality is, this guy was so intense. He drove a motorhome with full of boys from Montana up to Pacific University in Oregon. It's a very hard tournament. He got kicked out. They threw him out of the tournament. Bob goes to the motorhome, puts a hat on and a jacket, and comes back in. Yeah,
he was Bobby Valentine on.
He was serious. Then when they threw him out again, he tried showing him a ticket stub, like he went back and bought a brand new ticket. Dude, you walked out to that motorhome right there. You put a hat. You're Bob Zadek. He didn't know everybody knew him. He had no idea that when he came to a tournament, he was like famous. People would look back, that's Bob Zadek. That's the guy from the motorhome. He brings people up here from Montana. He's got these 2 boys, Bill and Mike. These guys are killers. He didn't know these. He thought a hat was going to get him back in the tournament.
Fake mustache on. I love it. I absolutely. I can't be happier with that story. It's one of my favorites of all time. That's great. Okay. Is it getting better? Here's the question. And I believe that it is. And I have ideas as to why, but you have to know that it is getting better. Aaron Brooks is a better, well-rounded athlete and person than most of the guys that competed in the 90s and early 2000s. I really, truly believe that. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you're saying. Chael Sanderson will always say, it's just a game we play with our bodies, because he learned it from his dad, Steve. That's what Steve said to he and his brothers growing up. It's just a game that we play with our bodies. Go score a lot of points. I think that message is getting, and I don't want to throw like coaches like Dan Gable under the bus, but it was everything to him. It was everything. And I might catch some backlash for saying this, but so be it. You got to remember where Dan Gable was coming from. He was in a household where his sister was raped and killed while he was on vacation. He could have taken that energy and turned it into drugs and alcohol and negative things, but he didn't. He focalized it on wrestling, and winning an Olympic gold medal became the end all be all of the sport. And then he turned that into the most prestigious coaching career to date other than Chael. And what happened there was, I think, a lot of that disseminated to the youth coaches around the country, and they tried to model that type of reality for every athlete in front of them. And then we're dealing with the Randy Lewises of the world. And then we're dealing with people like Matt Lindland, who this is the only focus. And now all of a sudden you take that away and we don't have anything. I think a lot of these things are changing. And do you see it at a youth level and at a high school level?
Well, I love that observation by you. I certainly don't disagree with it. I need a little time. You got to have me back on. You got to let me chew on that a little bit, because okay. I like what you're saying. I think that is true. I love what you said about Brooks, quite frankly, because I see him that way. In Brooks doesn't know. I'm the guy that picked against him. I'm the guy that says he's not going to beat David Taylor. But what he doesn't know is I've actually dealt with Brooks for about 6 years. We had a guy in Oregon, Whitlake. Whitlake was trained with our club. Anyway, Whitlake met up with Brooks for the junior world team, and we got to deal with him a couple of times. So, I mean, I've been following this guy, and I've just been watching this improvement. I love what you're saying, because I will be curious what happens with Brooks after this. Is he one of those guys that can stay positive, that can see this is something we do. Gable was great at that. And I'm talking actually Steveson here as opposed to Dan Gable.
Right.
I think he was proud of himself for winning that Olympic gold, but that was not the end all be all. I've got to win this. My life is going to be over. It really wasn't like that in the least. And I get that there's some youth and there's some skill that comes with that. But I love what you're saying about Brooks, because possibly it is just a maturity issue. Possibly it is just something where if you can see the bigger picture, then you reduce, you come into the sport, then you go back to your real life. Yeah. And my wife had that talk with me, and it was very hard for me to hear. But when I quit MMA, she told me, it ended. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do with life, and whatever. And that just lasts a couple of weeks. But she told me repeatedly that you get no weeks. You don't get 2 weeks. You don't get what you get. This isn't real. You're playing a game. It's not real. You're an adult in a game. And she kept telling me it's not real. And I was so disrespected. And I'm looking around. I'm going, well, yeah, easy for you to say. You're driving a Bentley and living the Bentley. There was a lot of really sore bones that came for you to have that. And I'm thinking that as she's explained to me, your family's all that's real. This, you come home to this. We are what's real. All of this. But then I realized she was right. It took a few times of hearing that when I did realize, that's a game. And I was lucky to do that, and I got to do that, and I just share that with you because it is a mindset, and it's a fine line. Like, I'm not going to sit my kids down, and I'm talking about the wrestlers that I work with, any more than I'm going to sit the children down where I'm their father, and I'm at the spirit of the holidays. I'm not going to sit my team down and tell them, all right, listen, guys, here's the truth. All of you that come in here, don't get arrested. All of you that come in here don't actually get in any trouble. You don't get in trouble because you're tired, and I know where you are, and that's really why your parents bring you here. Wrestling practice is cheaper than daycare. Like, I'm never going to tell them the truth. I want them to believe it is sacrifice, it is work hard, because I want them to keep coming. I want them out of trouble. I know when they're here, they're not out roaming the street. I know when they leave here, they're too tired to go out and roam the street. Like, I mean, it's a community service when you're doing things like wrestling. I'm just sharing that I'm never going to tell them, but there is a time, much like when I've got the World or Olympic team, that I expect them on their own to know the truth, which is you didn't have to sacrifice and you didn't have to eat right. You didn't have to do any of that if you can have more points than that guy when the clock stops.
Ask Gable Steveson. Ask Gable Steveson, because like when that run where he went on from the NCAA tournament to the Olympic Games where he won in the last second against Geno Petrashvili, that might be the greatest athlete I've ever seen on a matted surface. Yep. And guess what? There wasn't a tremendous amount of sacrifice. Don't get me wrong, he worked hard. Don't get me wrong, I know he did. But everyone works hard. Let's call it what it is, right? Like, everybody works hard. Shit, I'm 46 years old and I work hard. But there's never anything that's going to come close to Gable Steveson on that run.
I went to Olympic camp, so I will not be offended. I filmed the workouts, and yes, everybody worked hard, but there was nothing that stood out. He wasn't there early or stayed later, and he did his workouts. And it really was something special. I mean, when you say that he didn't work hard, he didn't sacrifice, he didn't really have time. He was a sophomore, junior in college. Like, you get some of these guys that are 35 and 36, like they put in 12 more years than everybody. Obviously, they work the hardest, but it doesn't really work that way. If you
doesn't equate, it's not one-on-one.
That guy.
Right. It's not just it's not one-to-one comparison.
Okay. Hey, I got a video. Well, I got a video. I've never shown it. I'm in possession of it. I own it. I'm holding the camera. I have a video. First off, we go to Olympic camp, and it was held at a place where they hold hockey. So there's a great big ice skating rink. Gable shows up early. He's got skates on. He's skating by himself. And I mean, that was like a bear on skates. Just that video is actually very interesting. But he comes in.
I'd love to see
make him change. Yeah, just that alone is great.
I would love to see it.
He comes in, changes his clothes. I got a camera on him. We're asking him questions. And he stands down because he gets a call that he has to take. It's the WWE. And this is the call where they make the offer. Hey, we got 2 offers for you. One is this: you win a gold medal, it becomes this. Are you in or out? And he hung up and he said, please don't put that out. And we said, no problem. He said, but is it life-changing? And we still got the camera going. And he said, it's life-changing. So, we knew that he was going to take it. I'm just sharing for you. Like, that's a really good moment. But I got to spend time around Gable. He couldn't have been more pleasant. He didn't know that he was the scariest guy in the room. He didn't act like he was the scariest guy in the room. He was hanging out with the guys his age. So I apologize.
Yeah, no, he's the sweetest kid in the world. Like it's just he's a great kid. Period. The end. We created another great kid. And
how is that going to go? How is that going to go with the Titans? Can you walk in and I know Stephen Neal did, but I know Lesnar did not. Like, can you? How will he do?
So I don't think he's going to. I think I'd be surprised if we don't see him on a WrestleMania again soon. I don't mean tomorrow, but somewhat soon. I can't, like, it's different, man. Steve Neal was also 6'6".
Sure.
Steve Neal could put on the weight where he could be 350,
He was so
325.
good. He was
He's the
awesome.
best. I get to see him every day. It's a marvel. Do you know how? And this is a testament to the sport. It's building humility. You know that Stephen Neal comes in on Wednesdays before practice and puts food on for everybody. And I asked him, I'm like, Steve, what are you doing, dude? I mean, he goes, well, when I was in the league, we always had food around for the coaches, and it just sounded like a good idea, and it made everybody happy. Simple enough. Okay, Steve Neal, with your world title and your 3, Super Bowl rings, fair enough, sir. I will take that into consideration. That it makes me happier. And a banger of a pulled pork sandwich, banger, unbelievable.
I love that. I love those simple stories, and that was definitely one of the good guys. Stephen Neal out there, he would go to these tournaments and he wanted it too. But I remember the Olympic trials when he lost to McCoy, man, his hopes were not dashed. He went out and he found the football career, but he didn't find that football career just, he had a positive attitude. People liked him. He wasn't down in the dumps. He's back in the gym. He's lifting weights, not knowing what his next move is. But I'm just saying he really stayed the course.
Yeah.
And we do see some wrestlers where they run into something and they believe they failed. Sam Henson believed he failed. Mike Zadek believed he failed. Those guys didn't fail. Those guys won to a level that I could only dream about, that most could only dream about. It breaks my heart that they think they let somebody down. They did not. Mike Zadek did not let his father down. That's not true. And his father told him those things, trying to help him. And the dad would have told him, by the way, Bob would have got around to explaining to Mike how proud he was of him. Time ran out. Yeah. He ended up passing away. Time ran out. Or he would have told Mike that, and Mike should feel good about himself. I hate that. I hate that for Mike Zadek.
I agree. Okay. We're talking about the building of young men. And I have some thoughts in here that I wrote down. When the cameras are on, you are incredibly different than when they're not on. Not incredibly different. There's a side of you that comes out that is extreme. It drips confidence, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it helps the sport in amazing ways. And you have almost always just danced on the fence of arrogance and confidence. How do we, as coaches, express to kids to be able to walk the same fence and dance on the same fence that you have done so eloquently over the years? Because it's important. We have to have them express themselves, but at the same time, there is a negative connotation to arrogance. Yes?
Oh yeah. And that's a balance that I don't know. It's a conversation I can have, but I haven't figured that formula out either, because wrestling, we're very much encouraged not to do it. I mean, if you speak on the mat, it can cost you a point. If you use a curse word on the mat, it can cost you the match. I agree with that. I agree with there should be an etiquette. I agree with not throwing your headgear. I get the straps up. I believe you shouldn't spit on the mat. I mean, we've got certain things that you have to do, but it's very hard to explain those and make sure those are followed while being entertaining. I loved, and I was in full support of it, and nobody else was. You might remember when David Taylor had a real problem with Jaden Cox. When you had that trials match, and I mean, it was so interesting. That was the best of 3, and Chael was involved. That was so wonderful. And then Jaden's very first match, he didn't perform as well at the Worlds. And David came after him on Twitter, and it was simple. It's 140 characters or less. Like, I don't remember what David said, but I don't have to. It was in 140 characters or less. The whole community turned on him. They were so fierce. I loved it. Flo was putting on these super matches. I'm like, boom, there's the match. That's the match that we want to see more than anything else. And other people didn't see it that way, including Cox. Like, Cox didn't appreciate the print either. He thought that was rude. I know Coach Jackson was involved at that time, but he thought that it was a rude. And I remember loving it. Jordan Burroughs took down leg lace and technical fauled Kyle Dake in the second match at the World Trial. So he's with him. He's on the World team, and he called out. It wasn't Sidikov. It was a guy named Sarouche. Sarouche. And that was the couple-time world champion that Burroughs was going to have to deal with. And somebody had a camera going, and Jordan said, Sargouche, I'm coming for you. And I'm like, yes, it's awesome. And then he broke character. He started laughing. He apologized for it. He took it back. And it's like, that's really not that bad of a thing to say. I'm coming for you. Seems pretty simple. And when he first said it, I remember the emotion I felt inside going, yes, this is great. And then he took it all back, and it was all ruined. And my only point is to your question about how do we do that? It's hard because we can't do it if we don't encourage it. But if we encourage it, there is rules within our sport. There's times you can't say it on the mat. When you're after that whistle blow, I mean,
and then we're not even talking about the social mores that are involved with you're just supposed to get your hand raised and you're supposed to run off the mat and go into the tunnel. Yep. It's kind of bullshit, man. Like
it really is.
Look, it's kind of bullshit. We need to sell this. We need to sell this.
Yes. We had a guy, Oklahoma State signed him, and then he followed Perry out to Iowa. Carroll is his last name, though. But his senior year of high school, he did something, and then he flexed like Gable did. And it's this terrible clip. It's actually really embarrassing. The referee scolds him, and he goes, I saw Gable do it, which is a very cute and sweet thing for him to say. But I just didn't understand why he was getting scolded. If there is something against the rule, I'm all for it. But a little celebration. You know, Gable's hitting backflips. Meanwhile, Brett Metcalf pushes a guy who's doing a backflip, and I mean, they think that Brett should be disqualified. Again, it's really is a very baffling thing, and it's troubling. The fact that we only have 6 weight classes now is so troubling to me. When I was born, we had 12, and that came down to 8. It came down to 6. I remember the day to 8, from 10 to 8, ended up at 6. I remember the day it hit 6, and Dan Gable, most respected voice in our sport, told the media, this is before social media, this was right to a paper, and he told them, if you're going to cut any more weight classes in wrestling, drop the sport. And he said, because I, as a coach, cannot look a young boy in his eyes and tell him to set his life aside to pursue something that there's this limited of opportunity in. And we used to have 3-day tournaments. When John Smith was winning the Olympics, it was 3 days. I mean, they have cannibalized us, and we're not fighting back. We're happy to be getting along. And Fila was a bunch of judo guys that got drunk on wine, and they were stealing money. But UWW is not. This leader we got's a good guy.
I think so.
One thing he's not doing is he should be fighting back for 3-day tournaments. He should be fighting for 12 weight classes. I mean, it should be an absolute fight. We have the toughest guys out there, and they stand around, they get smacked around. And it comes back to the original thing that you and I discussed with the colleges and them getting cut. Are we in a better place because they were cut? No, we get smacked around. We could walk in that AD's office and we could put his ass in his seat in certain ways that nobody else could, but we don't do it. We get smacked around. And I've just never seen more legitimate tough guys become weaker because they're scared of somebody with a pin. And there's a respect there, please. I understand there's a respect there, but it is a confusing thing to stand back and watch
disheartening. At times. It's disheartening. So that brings me to the big question.
You want to know a move they pulled on Sean Charles out at Fresno State? I don't know if you're aware of this. No, so it's not as easy as you might think to cut a program. Like on one hand, you can't, but you're going to get sued. Now, nobody's ever lost the lawsuit, but you just got to go through as a school. So you try to cut them in as nice of a way as you can. There is no nice way. You should just come in and whack them. But they bring Sean Charles in out at Fresno State. They want to cut the program. So the AD sits him down and says, hey, if I want to get serious about wrestling, what do I need to do? What do I, facility-wise, athlete-wise, training program, what budget-wise, I want you to write it down. I want you to write it down, what we need to do here to be national champions. So Sean does. He writes it down, and it's great. He's got a real good plan together. He takes it back to the AD. AD says, okay, so this is what I do to be champions. So if I don't do this, we can't be champions. Okay, look, I can't afford this, so you just told me in writing that we can't be champions. I'm cutting the program. And that was the hook. They then took something to Arizona State real close time-wise. They go over to Arizona State. They hold that program hostage for $7 million, and Art Mattori was nice enough to write him the check. But now we got a precedence, right? All you got to do to get $7 million over here, apparently, is threaten to cut the wrestling program and then make a phone call to Art. And it was one of these really nasty spots. And it's like, man, you guys can do $1 in perseverance, or you can $1 in defense. And I don't know why we're not fighting back harder right now. I don't look that UWW is happy with 6. They're happy with 2 days. The production level is better. NBC showing it live as opposed to a recap. We're happy guys. No, we're not. We're pissed off guys. And your job isn't to just keep the sport. Your job is to grow the sport. The best way you're going to show, and they love to show you the numbers. They love to tell you numbers that none of us can see. Well, Maryland signups they're up 30% this year. Give a goddamn what you got in Maryland. I don't care what you did in Pennsylvania. I don't care at all. Are the weight classes up? That's how we're going to do this. Not total numbers and revenue that comes into you guys that we don't ever see. I want to know, are there more weight? This is how we grow the sport. Does it have more time on NBC? Does it have more days at Olympic Village? It's a yes or no. Don't tell me you signed 30 people more up in Maryland. But by the way, the size stayed the same. The brackets are still 16. You failed. If you grow the sport, they're not 16 anymore. They're back to 24. They're not 24 with 6 weight classes. They're up to 8 weight classes. It's not a 2-day sport. It's a 3-day sport. That is the only evidence we should ever accept from UWW on whether you've grown the sport or not. That's it, not signups and participation.
I agree. So here's the burning question. If you were king of the wrestling world, would you have the Olympics be the pinnacle, or would you rather leave the Olympic platform for autonomy on itself?
Wow. Well, jiu-jitsu is grappling, and it came along well after wrestling did. And they have surpassed us in every possible way. They have surpassed us for respect on the streets. They charge more to get into their clubs. They have more clubs nationwide by a factor of like 1,000%. 1,000 times, rather. I can't turn on the Olympics because I don't know how to yet. I'm a traditionalist, and that's what we got, and that's always been the big one, so I can't quite turn. If those are my two options, I'm going to keep the Olympics, but I definitely will drink to the idea that you just suggested. And there was a chance in there for a while. There was somebody that was going to hold a world championship, and they were going to pay him to come, and it was going to be the real world championship. They were calling like absolute, and it was the heavyweight versus the 211-pounder. But I did feel if Flo got big enough as our media arm, as the voice, at least here in North America, that Flo could hold a nationals and trump the governing body. The governing body's got 11 people in an office in Colorado. That's really great. But Flo has 311 people in an old car lot in Austin. I mean, I'm just sharing for you. Like, Flo could come in and flex. And if they wanted to put on a tournament that they said is for the real, and our community accepted it, I mean, Jiminy, Jack Roller got off the ground making up names of tournaments and got our community to accept it. I would know. I'd fill a van up and drive him out to Reno every single year for this tournament that he's calling the Nationals. And it's not.
Whatever. Hearsay and slander, so to speak. But okay, fine. And I can go on about this for 100 years with you. And here's where we have a small problem with that. Okay. The structure and pay setup right now in the sport of wrestling in the United States behooves wrestlers, the best wrestlers, okay, the Spencer Lees, the Zane Rethers, Kyle Dake, Aaron Brooks, Kyle Snyder, Mason Paris. It behooves them as athletes to train for one event, and that is the World Championship or the Olympic Games. Anything other than that, it does not pay for them to compete in those events, right? So when I was at Flow, it was so difficult to hand people a check to compete. It was so difficult. It was, if people knew how much money I was going to give to Kyle Dake to wrestle Chamizo and how much pushback I got, they would be astounded. And why? Well, here's the real answer. The real answer is, well, what time of the year are we doing that at? Well, because it might get in the way of a training cycle that I have for the World Championships or the World Team Trials that I need to win to get to the World Championships. And oh yeah, by the way, if it's not during those times, then I have to be kind of a workout partner for the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, right? So my job, while it says Olympic gold medalist at the pinnacle of my job status, really a big part of it is being a workout partner for the 165 pounder for Penn State. And I think what we're doing, look, is it good that there's more jobs in wrestling? Yep, it is 100%. But we've created a train only, don't compete culture. How many times did David Taylor wrestle in the last 2-3 years in a tournament that wasn't called the World Championships? 0, right? I mean, just pretty much 0 with the exception of Final X, right? Because he had to make the team.
Maul, I love what you're saying, but we're even doing it domestically. I mean, we're taking them out of our own tournament. The U.S. Open used to be such a special event. It was the actual Open. If you came out of the U.S. Open, you were the best wrestler in America. It was a real nationals. Now, best guy doesn't even have to show up. Not only does he not have to show up, he's encouraged to not show up. It was so cool a few years ago when Kyle Snyder entered it, even though he was the #1 guy. Like, Kyle Snyder is such a good example for wrestling because he actually likes to wrestle. Yep. He actually shows people that I like this sport. It's a game. I get to do it. I want to do it. And yeah, I mean, I watched them take this whole Final X thing, and we're going to go, and our number one guy sits here, and it's going to be the best of three. Like, this is really weird.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't be that way. And I've even seen coaches, these guys should be fired on the spot, where they'll come out and they'll talk about, in Russia, it doesn't even, they just pick the team, and then that coach wants that authority. We've had coaches in America that want the authority to pick the team and say, and the rest of the guys that aren't serious about it, they're called tourists. It's like, man, there has never been anybody in my lifetime ever, and I mean ever, that made a team that wasn't serious about it. Never. It is so hard and so competitive and so difficult. Like, the mere fact that you have that mentality that you're going to pick a team is so stupid, or that you're going to take these guys, you're going to get ready just for this one event. It's like, yeah, you've made that so important that it's this one event that you've taken away from our events. You've taken away from our trials. You've taken away from our nationals. The Sunkist Open doesn't even exist anymore. The NYAC Open, which used to be huge. The Oregon Open, which used to be huge. These don't even exist anymore. But why? Why are we going to buy memberships and pay a fee to USAW, who set up rules that take the guys that we need to come to our events out of our events? It's one of those really tricky situations. We're going to train all your friends. This hasn't bit them in the ass yet, but it's gonna. It hasn't done it yet, but it's gonna. And here's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to use one of my own teammates, Dan Henderson, as an example. Dan Henderson stopped wrestling. I, as Dan's teammate, needed him to stop wrestling. He was in front of me, but he stopped wrestling. So he's off in Pride. He's making a bunch of money. He's doing great on TV. I get to the World Team Trials. There's Dan, and he's got a singlet on. What are you doing here? And he tells me, he said, well, stop wrestling, and I don't care if I'm the number one guy, but if I make the finals, USA Wrestling, when I'm the national team, will put me on health insurance, and I have a child. He was talking about his daughter Sierra, and he just leveled with me. Like, I'm entered this tournament I haven't wrestled all year, and I'm not serious about it, but I can stop other guys, and I can get myself on insurance. Now, the only reason I take the time to tell you that story is we've got these number one guys. If you medaled and you get to sit till the final, well, okay, then you're automatically on the following year's national team, because we take 3. And I know I'm stating the obvious for you, but people don't understand this about wrestling, and it hasn't been them yet, but it's gonna. This is the dumbest thing. If you medal in a tournament over here, overseas, somewhere in the summer, you get to sit out everything until the final. It is the dumbest rule, but you're eventually going to run into a guy like Chael, who's going to game the system for Chael. I'm not going to step aside any more than Dan Henderson didn't show up. I'm going to take whatever I can get. And if I medaled over here and I know full well I'm going to retire, I will tell nobody. I will keep my sponsorship checks coming in. Every time it's time to wrestle, I'll tell the media I will. And the day of, I'll pull the Roulon guard, or I'm a little bit overweight, or my shoulders bother me. I'll kick the can. I'll keep all the money. And right here, no matter what happens, I'm still on the national team. I'm going to take somebody's spot. I'm going to take their money. I haven't just done it for the year leading to this. Because I do it here, I now qualify for another year. I'm not just taking spots one time. I'm taking it for 2 years. And you want to know who gave me the authority? You idiots. Thinking you're making a better team. And excuse me, Maul, let me tell USAW, I love USAW, by the way. I'm using them because they're a national governing body. There's not a team, just so you understand. This isn't a team, okay? As a matter of fact,
we work out together ever.
If we make a world team, it's because you beat my actual teammate. So they're going to give us singlets once a year, and they're going to put us under the same banner once a year. And I'm going to go there. I'm going to learn things about you. I'm going to be nice to you. But when I go home to my actual team, I'm going to tell them what I learned. I'm going to tell them how to beat you, because I don't want you here anyway, because we're not a team. And I only share, like, it's really weird, but we do these training camps, and let's get them together, and then let's do this bonding experience. There is no bonding. We're not a team. I will go to my team, and that's where I'll bond. I will then come compete against you guys. If you get to jump on them, we all go together. But we're not a team, and we don't need to be. We don't need to be. I've got a budget. I get to bring a personal coach. I even get to bring a workout partner. Those guys are going to be my team. You're not, which is fine. But stop wasting the money and stop pretending. Stop acting like I got to get these guys together so that I can do 3 different training camps so I can be ready for the Worlds. No, you don't. You want to be ready for the Worlds? Do it like the best guys in the world. Go train with the college program, and when practice is done, spend 15 minutes in parterre. Ask John Smith if that worked. Ask Kendall Cross if that worked. Ask the Brands brothers. Ask Jackson. Ask the Schultzes. Ask Les Gutches. Ask any world champion we've ever had. If I do a collegiate workout and I do some parterre at the end of practice, am I going to be ready for the Open? Yes, you'll be more ready than everybody else, because they don't do dick and they're only in practice for an hour and 15 minutes because they believe in rest. You want to ruin a guy? You want to ruin a team? Send them out to the Olympic Training Center for a month. Those athletes will come back to your team, and they will be different. And they will start talking to you about rest days. And they will start talking about their strength and conditioning. And they will tell you that months of the year that they're going to skill build. It's ridiculous. You show up, you work every day as hard as you can, and you go home. You come back tomorrow, you do the same thing. That's wrestling. And they keep wondering why we would have this simple college guy that's never wrestled free, never not one freestyle match, but he enters the open and he storms through it because he's in better shape than all of you. Because it's harder to do than this sport where you get to lay down and the ref will bring you up if you don't get your ass up on your own. It's easy. It's 6 minutes with a break as opposed to 7 minutes with no break. I mean, I can list all the reasons for you. The greatest training there possibly is do a college workout, do 15 minutes of parterre when it's over. That has never not worked. But we do get these fancy guys and they start reading about it and they start reading about their body needs rest. Your body doesn't need rest. Your body needs practice, you dum-dums.
So, okay, wait. You brought up Kendall and you brought up John. And I'm going to say one word and I want you to tell the story. It's my favorite Chael Sonnen story of all time. And I'm going to say the word once. Can you please go?
So, I get to meet John Smith. This is such a thrill for him, but he doesn't know that. Like, he's just a wrestling coach from Oklahoma. He doesn't know the way people look at him. And he doesn't know that when I was in the 4th grade at 9 years old, it was 1988, and my father woke me up and took me into his bedroom to watch a black and white TV, which is the only one we had in the house, because he was about to wrestle. I got to see his clips of his semi-match and his entire gold medal match. And very next night, my dad woke me up again to do this. So, I mean, I'm just sharing such a big deal. I'm sitting straight across from him. We have a dinner. John Bartis puts it on. It's 3 hours long. I'm straight across from him. Tommy Rollins is on one side. Les is on one side. And I quizzed John Smith for 3 hours straight. Everything I ever wanted to ask him. And he's nice enough. He realized I got sat across from a guy that's going to drive me crazy, but I'm going to answer his questions. So at some point, I name drop. I know Kendall Cross. So I mention Kendall. And when I say Kendall, John says, Kendall Cross? You know Kendall? I used to kick his ass. I would kick his ass. And he's putting a chew in as he says it. And which is exactly what Kendall said. Kendall said, man, I could never take the guy down. Anyway, he's putting a chew in. And John cuts me off. And he said, you know, Kendall, he's a pretty good wrestler. He won the Olympics. Once. Like completely he said he was a pretty good wrestler. He won the Olympics. Once. And he'd already dismissed it. When he called him pretty good, like he'd already dismissed him, but it was just wonderful. But that's the mindset. I asked John Smith, I said, you gotta understand, in 1988, John Smith's idol happens to be his coach, who happens to be his brother Leroy. John is a boy. He's a boy. He just got his degree 21 days before this tournament. He's got to wrestle Randy Lewis, the guy that beat his brother, who's his idol, who's his cornerman, and who is his coach. He's got to wrestle this guy that he went to court against, where his own family and father had to raise money to try to get the son on. He's got to wrestle him, but he's got to believe he can beat him. This is not just the guy that did this to your brother and your family. This is the defending Olympic champion. You're trying to make a team. He's the champion. This is a lot. And I just asked John, what is that like? What is that like going into battle knowing the deck is against you? And he said, well, Chael, what you got to understand, and I'm going, okay, this is it. It's coming right now. He's going to tell me how he compartmentalized this. He's going to tell me this whole thing. And I got John Jones coming up in my own life. I've got a contract. I got to go fight John Jones. And I'm trying to wrap my head around that. And that's why I'm asking him this question. He says, well, Chael, he thinks my name's Chael. It's funny.
No, that's why it's so funny to me. you said it 3 times already, and it just makes me so happy.
He says, Chael,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he thinks about it. Like, this is this was a deep answer. And he says, so Chael, you got to understand, in 1988, I had decided I was going to be the Olympic champion. That was it. He could beat the guy that sued his family. He could beat the guy that beat his family in the lawsuit, that made the team, that won the gold medal, that stopped everybody, that ended your brother's career who's sitting in your corner right now. And the reason that he could beat him 2 out of 3 times in one day is because he had decided he was going to be the Olympic champion.
Period. The end.
That's the mindset of a genius. That is the mindset of a genius. What I thought was going to be complicated and sophisticated was anything but. He had decided, and he told me, he said, you know, Chael, what do you got? You're out there from Oregon, aren't you? And he said, what do you got? 18, 20 world Olympic champions out there? Okay, we have one. His name is Les Gutchess, and he actually moved away. But he says, what do you got? 18? You got 20 Olympic world champions out there? He said, you know, that ain't very many. He said, where I come from, you're expected. you're expected to rise up, go to Oklahoma State, win the NCAAs, then win the World and Olympic Games. He says that's not, they don't treat you. That's a normal. That's what you do. You come up, you go to Oklahoma State, and this is what you do. And he said, so, as far as beating Randy, that was an Olympic champion, like that wasn't a thought. And he said, don't forget, I was the world champion going into that, not him. And more than anything, that was my year. He'd already won, but this was my year. And it was so simple. And he thought that I've got 18 or 20. I don't know why he thought that much success was.
You had a pretty good. Hey, Quest was a pretty good room, though. Let's call that what it is, okay? Like,
well, Quest, I appreciate that, but I'm just speaking, to him. He's got, it's like, yeah, these guys that came through Oklahoma State and the guys that you saw, like, that is pretty normal. If you were 4-time All-American at Oklahoma State during that time frame, you failed. That wasn't, if you didn't have those national titles, man, they'd point at you in bars and snicker. I mean, it was a different thing. And that's all he was letting me know. Kendall Cross, he was a pretty good wrestler. He won the Olympics once. Yeah, as he put it in, by the way, as he puts it in, like shakes it off his face, and then he holds it. What? Oh my God. It was amazing.
2 teams, John. He made 2 teams. I mean, he was on the 92 team. Like, don't forget about that one. He's pretty good.
Yes. No, okay. Hey, Kenny Monday's the same. I try to tell people how great Kenny Monday was, and they, Jordan Burroughs for that weight class. And no, Jordan is great, but Brandon Slade was great. Like Kenny was on 3 teams, and he did one of them after he was retired.
Yep.
He was 36 years old. He made the final team after he quit wrestling.
Yeah.
He accidentally made this team. I mean, it was just incredible. Kenny Monday is one of the best ever.
Sickest. Yeah, he's incredible.
Can't tweet worth a damn, right? Don't follow him on Twitter. He looks like a dum-dum, but my God, he was a genius on the mat.
That's a true story. I won't go down that road with you. Okay, we got to get to our quick questions. Try your best not to think too much and just spit these questions, the answers out. Okay, here is the first one. What is the greatest wrestling shoe of all time?
It is yellow. It is down in my truck right now. I paid $750 and bought it off of eBay. I searched for about 11 years until it came up. It is a yellow Adidas that the Soviets wore, and they quit making them around 88.
Yeah, the freestyles. Yes. Oh,
that's the greatest.
Awesome. You have a pair of those?
I have a pair. I paid $750 for a used pair of shoes, but they were almost like new. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yellow with the stripes.
Oh yeah. Can you send me a picture, please?
100%. They're in my truck right now. Literally, I wore them last night to practice. Yes, I will send you a picture. And they're old and worn now. Okay, I bought these back in like 2007, but yes, I will send you a picture tonight.
Dude, you have a pair of yellow freestyles. Those are like the unicorns, dude. Yes. Those are hard to find. Those and the pink 88s. Wow. Okay, that's a very fair assessment. Okay, next one. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the sport of wrestling, what would it be?
I would change this right here. Okay, I get to change one thing. We don't do 16 at the Olympics. Any country that is recognized, any country that goes to the world, any country that is recognized can send their representative to the Olympics. The Olympics becomes a true world championship, not an elitist club for what kid's dad had the most money to get him to the most tournaments. We really find out who the best wrestler alive is. And I will admit the best wrestler shows up, but 2 through 10 can be anybody's guess. I would no more 16, no more 24, no more 30. If you have a distinction with the IOC, you have the right to send your representative.
I will expand upon that to this point. I think that the number 1 guy at the weight class at 86 kilos is probably on paper Aaron Brooks. Number 2 guy at that weight class is Yazdani. Okay. I think that if they wrestled 100 times, Aaron Brooks beats Yazdani 99 of those times. But here's the rub. I don't know if he's going to win an Olympic gold medal. And the chances of him winning an Olympic gold medal go down significantly if that bracket is bigger. The bigger the bracket for Aaron Brooks, the more likely he is to get beat by somebody, let's call it from Uzbekistan, let's call it from Mongolia, or wherever the heck you want to call it. But there's going to be somebody that just runs away, thumb blocks, stays out of ties, and doesn't wrestle him, and maybe sneaks out an easy takedown towards the end because everybody's tired. And that I can see happening. There's no chance. If I would bet the house upon Aaron Brooks beating Yazdani in a match. But you take the upsets that are created by a 32-man bracket or even a 64-man bracket. that's a different animal. That's a different animal, and it's far more entertaining and it's far more engaging. People can say, "Oh, well, the best wrestler didn't win." Yeah, but that's the best wrestler on today. Today, right now, it's the best wrestler. And I got to tell you, I couldn't agree more. We need more spots in the Olympics and more weight classes.
Where do you stand on sending more than one person? Like when I'm watching swimming and we get the gold and the silver, or I watch track and field and we get the gold and the silver. Like, where do you stand on that? Why one guy? Would you like to send 2 guys? Would you like to send 3 guys?
I think so. Okay. The short answer is yes, we need to be able to send more representatives, but the long answer is going to harken back to what you talked about earlier. If they only wrestle in the world championships, no, I don't think that they deserve that spot. Okay, as a second spot. But if we can put together a ranking series that means something, UWW, not a ranking series that's just bullshit for seeding. Yep. I'm talking about a ranking series that you have to attend in order to wrestle at the World Championships. Now we're talking. If Aaron Brooks and David Taylor both go to all 4 ranking series events and they score the amount of points that it's necessary to qualify for the Olympic Games or the World Championships, yes, we should absolutely have more than one spot available for those weight classes. However, if you decide that you're just going to wrestle in the World Championships and the qualifying procedures, that is Final X and the World Team Trials, then no, I don't think we should have more than one. But I think that there is a way to monetize those ranking series events and put gravity to them, put importance to them, so that we can see our stars on a stage that's important more than once a year, but also we can make room for more stars on our biggest platform, which is the World Championships or the Olympic Games.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, awesome. Last question, and we will get you out of here. This is the tough one, Chael. This is the tough one. You only get 4, and they have to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
The best wrestler America has ever had is a man named John Smith. And 6 in a row trumps 6 in other ways. The one that doesn't get credit, but Duchess, Sanderson, and Jackson will tell you, is Mark Schultz. And so I'm gonna go Smith. I'm gonna follow that up by Mark Schultz, and then that's where it can start to get a little bit sticky. We've had some very interesting guys. I do think that Kenny Monday belongs on that list, not just for accomplishments, but who he beat at the time. Like there's very few times in life where you have a true world champion. I remember them questioning Varner's Olympic championship because the Iranian got jobbed out. I mean, there's very few times where everybody stands back and goes, "You're the best." And Kenny Monday was at a time where he was the best, and then you just can't do this realistically if you leave off Bruce Baumgartner. Ooh. Just achieved too much for too long over too many different eras, and that would be my top 4.
I freaking love
and that pains me. I mean, I almost named my son Dake. I almost named him. I think that Dake is my favorite wrestler.
Okay,
but he's probably gonna have to get through next weekend to make the Mount Rushmore.
Fair enough. Chael Sonnen, who's better than you?
Who is better than you? This was fun, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you. I will be in touch. Hey, have you heard the new joke going around?
I'm listening.
This is like catching the world by storm. But do you know what is charming and handsome and disappears in an instant? Boom.
Yes. I really love him. This is the fucking best. Wait. Don't go anywhere before you hit that next button. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.
What you want to know, man? Welcome to the show.